I 40M found out that my wife 39F of 14 years cheated on me 5 years ago. How to proceed? 2 stories. Story 1. Around 5 years ago, my wife was working and studying from home whilst I was working often long hours outside, as well as trying to find the time to spend with our 7-year-old son. My wife met a female friend through an online study group and they quickly bonded and became close friends. As she is a highly sociable person and at that time didn't have much opportunity to meet people, I tried to stay out of the way and let her spend time chatting to her new friend. It was often late night or early morning as they were in different time zones, but, I figured, some good girl talk was just what she needed. My wife told me a lot about her friend, and even got me to chat with her a couple of times. I think it was about some life-hacking tip or other. About a year into the friendship, my wife told me she'd like to meet her friend in person and go away for a week on a city vacation. I didn't object and we arranged a week when I could leave work early to pick up our son from school. She asked me not to call. She would call or text me but explained that the woman was single and she didn't want her to feel her, so was always checking up on them. Fair enough, I thought. She duly went away on the vacation and returned refreshed and energetic. After that, the study course became more intense and neither of them had the time to keep up. About 3 years later, I was working on my wife's computer. She'd asked me to proofread a letter or something. A brief email notification popped up. It was from the same friend, and I read the first lines. Something like this: I remember forever the times we spent together. Pat sends his love. I find it hard to believe my own naivete sometimes, but my first thought was that the person might have had a time change since they met and just kept the name Pat, which is Uni's time. I didn't ask my wife about the email. Our energetic kid was around most of the time and we were both working long hours. But I was curious about the identity of the woman I'd heard about almost every day for 18 months. The next time my wife asked me to do something on her computer, I snooped in her Outlook and searched the person's name. It's the first time I'd pried and not something I'm proud of, plus I would probably have been better living on in blissful ignorance. But I found their correspondence saved in an offline folder. Some were emails, others emailed copies of chats, but no pictures or attachments. I started opening them at random. It soon became clear her friend was a straight man, a few years older than her and rather shy, and the affair was almost entirely her initiative. Most of the emails and chats consisted of soppy time talk, fantasies and declarations of undying love which I couldn't be bothered to read. But a few mentioned me and I felt a little more justified in reading those. My wife told him about the children they would have had if she'd met him instead of me, and how they could one day live together. She told him we had separated, but lived close to each other to share the care of our son. She had married me because I was a good person and I loved her, but not for love. In fact, she had only loved 2 people in her life before him and I was not one of them. All of this read like some bizarre fantasy world she had created. She's always told me she loves me even at that time and sounded sincere, how lucky she is to have someone who loves her so much, and has not once suggested splitting up, even in our worst fights. To be honest, even after reading this, I'm not sure if she was speaking her mind or just trying to keep his interest, and I could probably forget most of this and move on. But one email I read, the last one, said something that I find it hard to forgive her for. A few months before their vacation, she told him she was planning to go to the doctor to see about taking the pill so they wouldn't have to use Syndems. I don't know if she actually did. In another email he told her he would bring some, but I find it incredibly disturbing that she could even suggest it. Ever since we met, she's insisted we use Syndems as contraception. I don't particularly like them, but the alternative is virtually no time, and whenever I've tried to discuss other options her standard response is, why should contraception be a woman's responsibility? I should add she was on the pill for a couple of years before we met and I assume it didn't work out, and she once told me that over 10 years, her ex-boyfriends had never used Syndems, but that's her past, not my business. The point is that I was married to her now, taking my responsibilities seriously, and yet suddenly it's somehow okay to suggest having unprotected time with someone she'd talked to over internet chat and never even met. Now around a year ago we had an argument after I brought a colleague home from a late work party unannounced and woke her up. After he'd left she told me I'd been selfish, thoughtless, she was furious with me, disgusted and so on. Until I couldn't take it anymore and told her I'd known about the gender of her friend ever since I'd seen the email notification, the truth, but without mentioning anything else I'd read. It certainly stopped the argument. She told me she was sorry, she'd lied to avoid hurting me, it was at a difficult period of her life which was over now, and I was such a good husband for staying beside her in spite of her craziness. She loved me, and we should forget about it and move on. But I still have nagging doubts. Why did she offer to have unprotected time with a man she'd never met, yet to this day insists her husband of 14 years used protection? Shouldn't it be the other way round? Why did she tell him she didn't love me? Was that just to keep him interested? If so, why couldn't she just say we'd drifted apart? Why did she have to say she'd never loved me and specify a precise number of people she had loved? I'm in two minds about whether to bring this up with her again. It was 5 years ago, and I'm almost certain she's been loyal since. I still love her, she often tells me she loves me, and we have time a few times a month or more. I don't want to start a confrontation that might wreck a marriage with a child in the middle. Plus I'll have to tell her that I snooped on her emails, which I'm quite prepared to do, but I don't want her to feel it's anything other than a one-off. What does Reddit think? Should I let sleeping dogs lie? Or wake them up and hope for the best? TL, Doctor, my wife had an internet affair 5 years ago, told me it was a girlfriend, they went on vacation together. Later I found emails revealing friend was a male lover. She'd proposed unprotected time and told him she'd never loved me. What to do? Story 2. Background. I 24 meters have been going out with my girlfriend 22F for just over 3 years. We do not live together. We were both living at our parents' houses while attending university, but I recently graduated and now have my own place with a roommate. She still lives with her mom, but we have had a few discussions about moving in together. I work full-time at an office job and she is in class with a part-time restaurant job on the side. She started this job at the beginning of November and was hired by one of her friends. She told me it was annoying that several of the male staff members constantly flirted with her and made inappropriate jokes despite her being in a relationship. This includes the restaurant's bartender 31 meters. In late November, only a couple weeks after she started, the staff had their annual Christmas party at the restaurant. It was on a Monday night since the restaurant is closed Tuesday mornings. Later that week, my girlfriend was also supposed to be house-sitting, dog-sitting for a friend. She had to go feed the dog every day and was allowed to stay overnight if she wanted starting Tuesday. We were talking about how we both thought it was hot to have time in someone else's house, and planned to have a few wild nights when we got the chance. My side of the story. I stayed home the night of the party. I was told it was staff only, no significant others, and I had work in the morning, so I had no problem staying in. I dropped my girlfriend off and I was texting her throughout the night. At around 11 I told her I was going to sleep and said goodnight. I was still up another hour or so, but based on her text she was quite drunk and it was frustrating having a regular conversation, so I didn't want to text anymore. I sent her a message the next morning and didn't hear back until around 2 p.m, when she informed me she was extremely hungover and slept half the day. Even though her mom's house was just around the corner from the restaurant, she said she instead decided to go to the dog-sitting house a day early since it was on the way to the bar that some people headed to after the party. Apparently the homeowners left earlier Monday night. We hung out later that night and she showed me photos of the party. I saw most people brought their significant others, and I was kind of insulted. I confronted her about it and she said she didn't think we were supposed to be invited and that I shouldn't have cared since I had worked the next day anyways. We had a minor disagreement but nothing serious. The next couple's days were normal, we were happy, and Thursday night I suggested we go over the dog-sitting house together. She started acting weird and said she didn't want to do that anymore, but we could hang out at my place. We did, watched some TV, and I tried to initiate time. She refused and said I was being too pushy and went home. I didn't think I did anything wrong and I was frustrated. The next 2 weeks or so were more of the same. No time, which led to frustration and silly arguments over little things. She started exams in mid-late December and stress was through the roof. Finally, after she finished exams we went out to a party, went home together and had time. It had been probably 3 weeks, and previously we were having S-time 5 times a week. Over the Christmas break we resumed having lots of S-time, but things still didn't feel right. There were lots of arguments. We both returned to work school and it seemed like every day there was some new disagreement. And now today. We were fighting about something stupid, whether or not her friend calling me Garfield should be insulting, and trying to resolve it. I made an offhand comment about how these little fights shouldn't bother me so much, it's not like she cheated on me. And then she broke down. She started sobbing and saying that she made a huge mistake at the Christmas party. She said she couldn't bear to tell me and wanted to kill herself. Her side of the story. After the crying stopped, I made her tell me what happened. I was pretty pissed off and yelling because she basically told me she cheated on me a month and a half ago and tried to hide it. This is her side. A lot of it is pieced together from her messages and what her coworkers told her, since she has no little memory of the night. The party was open bar, and she and her friend were hanging out at a bar most of the night. The bartender was another employee who had volunteered to take the night off from drinking to serve everyone else. Partway through the night, he started giving her drinks that she wasn't even asking for. She was having a good time and accepted them. Eventually she got blackout drunk, still pretty early in the night too. She doesn't remember me texting her good night, which was only around 11 p.m. At midnight, she texted the dog-sitting people asking if she could go over that night. There was no answer, of course, since they were on an international flight somewhere. Everyone kept drinking until about 12:30 a.m. Around 1 a.m., the bartender drove a group of people from the party to a bar. He returned to the party to drive the last carload of people to the bar. Everyone else had made their way home by this point. He dropped everyone at the bar except my girlfriend. He told the others he would drive her home, but together they then went back to the dog-sitting house. I don't know the exact details of what happened next. But around 3 a.m., she sent a photo to their work group chat. It includes her, the bartender, and the dog in a bed. You could only see from their shoulders up, but they were obviously shirtless. She included a message that said, "I hope everyone is having a good time." I know we are. She insists she has zero recollection of this happening. She woke up Tuesday lunchtime and was surprised she wasn't in her own bed. The bartender wasn't there when she got up and there was no sign of him. She said she assumed she must have decided to go out to the bar after, which is why she asked to stay at the dog-sitting house instead of her own. Apparently she didn't find out what happened until Thursday when she was talking to her friend. She was shown the picture she sent, which was since buried in the group chat. She still insists she has no memory of anything, and freaked out and didn't know what to do. That's why she refused to go to that house with me and why things suddenly got so weird between us. She says she wanted to deny to herself that it happened and didn't want to tell me. After finding out the truth today, there has been lots of yelling and crying, and I'm currently home by myself. My thoughts. First of all, I do believe she was taken advantage of. She was blackout drunk and the bartender was sober and significantly older. Her co-workers all confirmed that the bartender told everyone he was dropping her at home, and also that he was feeding her free drinks all night. I also believe she didn't remember it happening at first, because there was a definite mood change on Thursday, which lines up with when she said she found out. However, I can't help but feel like she was willing even if she was drunk. I'm hurt and it feels like I was cheated on. It's not like the bartender took her home against her will and assaulted her. She figured out the logistics of finding a place to go with him and looked extremely happy in the photo. Why it still feels like cheating. I was told I wasn't invited to the party when everyone else brought their so's. She had access to the dog-sitting house a day earlier than I thought. She had brought the key to dog-sitting house to her work party, even though it was right next to her mom's house. The bartender is a guy who had openly flirted with her for weeks. She didn't tell me what happened for over a month, and had planned on hiding it forever. In anger I told her that if this wasn't cheating then she must have been timely assaulted. And that if we don't press charges then at the very least we need to ensure the bartender loses his job. She cried again and refused to do either. Since she can't remember the night, she isn't willing to report him for anything and can't confirm she didn't want it. What do you guys think? I'm an emotional mess right now and struggling to be logical. Do I need to put emotion behind me and support her as a victim? Or is she a cheater? Things were great before this and I had hoped to spend my life with this girl. Update 1. I spoke to her again today and said that there were too many coincidences that make this seem like she planned it out. I told her I needed a bit of time to figure this out, but I didn't think I would be able to move past it. I know drawing this out is probably not the best way to handle anything, but all logic goes out the window when you're the one involved in a mess like this. However, there are still a few updates worth mentioning. We looked at the photo again, and it really looks like the bartender took the photo. There were only 2 coherent messages she sent after I said goodnight, one to the homeowners and one along with the photo in the group chat. She had a few other messages to a non-work friend during this time that are complete nonsense. She showed me an earlier message where her friend said the party was staff only. She insisted she had never messaged the bartender except within the work group chat. She showed me unaccepted Facebook and Snapchat invites from him, and said she didn't even have his number. She was willing to let me use a recovery tool to prove they had never messaged, but I didn't go through with it. She had the key on her keychain since she picked it up from the homeowners like a week in advance. She is so adamant about this that she was checking photos she took of her odometer hitting 100k to see if her keys were visible, but no proof. She said she would be willing to report the bartender to work for Timul harassment, but was still uneasy about pressing charges. She still went through with it and hid it from me, so even if her story is completely true somehow, I'm not sure if I can move past it. Important update 2. I have decided to side with my girlfriend and support her as we figure this out. I'm not going to pretend everything is fine, and I'm not promising that we'll make it through this. Honestly, I have a feeling we probably won't. But we've been together for 3 years and I believe her about what happened. I think she is a victim even if she didn't handle everything correctly that night. I'm going to support her and try to figure out the full story. I've read every comment in here. I was responding to many with information in these updates, but there are far too many to reply to. Most of the top comments were posted early and are quick to tell me to break up. If you read the rest, they are probably split 60-40 about whether she set it all up or if she was assaulted. To everyone saying that she should break up with me for how I have handled this so far. Please try to understand how emotional this ordeal has been for both of us. She came to me saying she made a mistake and that it was her fault. And she hid it for over a month. I only learned all of this yesterday and I freaked out. Redditors' reactions. Redditor 1, it doesn't have to be all or nothing. Even if you give her the benefit of the doubt and hold the view that she was taken advantage of by the bartender, you can also decide that her actions and decisions leading up to and after the event have made it impossible for you to maintain a relationship. You guys are young and you should fully consider all options without feeling like you owe it to someone to stay in a relationship. Life pro tip, you never do. Redditor 2, listen, she purposefully lied to you about it being a work-only event, and other so's were there. A guy was going to be at the event that had been flirting with her for some time. She lied to you about the timing of the house. She brought the key to the house so she'd have a place to go to that night. A place to go to without you. All of this happened before she had a single drink. Not telling people after a sexual assault is not uncommon. Pre-planning a bunch of lies to set up a sexual assault by the victim just doesn't happen. She wanted something to happen. Something did happen. Perhaps she was blackout drunk when it happened, which makes it non-consensual. But I'd be thinking she put herself in that position on purpose if I were you. She had the means to cheat, the motive to cheat, and she created the opportunity to cheat. And I really struggle with how she could be blackout drunk, and take a naked selfie with this guy and send it to her work friends with the caption about having a good time. And that means your relationship was over months ago. Act accordingly.